Hello and welcome to Super Saturdays, a comic book media podcast where each episode we'll be focusing on your favorite comic books, TV shows, and movies to figure out if these projects will stand the test of time. I'm Damon A, and on today's episode, I'm joined by.
Cody Ziglar.
All right, well, on with the show. All right, well, this is honestly, arguably, one of the biggest guests we've had on the show. And so big, in fact, that the sound engineer, Daenerys, is making noises in the background right now, if you can hear Soups. So thank you for hopping on, Cody. Seriously.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, before we get into our little news roundup, I just want to talk a little bit more about what it is that you do. So, Cody, you are the current writer for Miles Morales Spider-Man.
That is correct.
You also are working on Spider-Punk.
That is true.
You also are one of the writers for Clear the Creek,
That is true.
Futurama, Rick and
Uh-huh.
Morty. You also wrote my favorite episode of She-Hulk.
Thank you.
And yeah, you have a really stacked career. So
Oh,
round of
thank you.
applause.
Thank you. It's one of those things where you don't really know. It doesn't. You never notice what you've actually done until people actually list it out. And you're like, oh, I guess that does sound like a lot of stuff. But to me, it's like, yeah, you don't even. I never realized what the cool stuff I worked on. So like, I'm very lucky to be able to work on projects that one I was super interested in growing up, but also I think are good. Like I think I'm very lucky that I get to work on quality projects that I'm also a big fan of. So like I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do for a living.
Nice, nice. Of all the things that you've worked on, what would you say is your favorite one?
Oh man, I mean I love them all. I think it's probably a tie between She-Hulk because without She-Hulk I wouldn't have gotten into writing comic books professionally. So like I think it's definitely tied with She-Hulk because it's just like a great room. The showrunner Jessica Gao was so funny. The whole room was funny. Like getting to write Daredevil, bring Daredevil back into the MCU was super cool. And then Futurama, just because I grew up watching that show so often and like being a part of that has just been so surreal. Like hearing those guys talk about, back when they were writing on The Simpsons with like Conan or whatever, and being like, this is a crazy, like surreal thing to be a part of. So I love all my shows equally, but I think definitely She-Hulk and Futurama are like my two favorite TV shows I've worked on.
Okay, okay, that's understandable. So you said that like your work on She-Hulk has really got you into doing
Hmm.
comics professionally.
Yeah.
What was like the starting point with that? Like, what moment were you like, okay, comics?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's not too different from you, but like, I grew up reading comics. Like, I think the first comic I ever got, my dad took me to this. I'm from North Carolina. He took me to this. I think it's called Heroes Con in North Carolina, in like Charlotte, North Carolina, and he got me like Spawn #3. Like, I don't know why he bought that for like a 5-year-old kid, but for whatever reason, he bought me Spawn #3. I was like, oh, this is cool. But the way that I got into like writing comics professionally was that the #2 in the room, basically the second person in charge whenever Jessica would be out handling stuff, would was this dude named Zeb Wells, who I'm sure you're familiar with and your audience is familiar with. But if you don't know who he is, he's been writing comic books forever. He wrote an amazing Hellions run. He's currently writing Amazing Spider-Man. But we really hit it off. And I just remember being in the room and like on our lunch breaks and stuff, I'd look over and he'd be at his computer and I'd see like, I think at the time he was writing like an Ant-Man thing. So I saw like this huge double spread of like Ant-Man. I was like, what the heck is this, dude? He's like, oh yeah, man, I write comics and this is just like me getting the art in. I was like, how do I do that? He was like, well, I think you're very talented and funny, but like let me wait till like your actual script comes in to see how it turns out before I like recommend you to Marvel proper. And then like, my She-Hulk episode, the script came in and like everyone, enjoyed it. So like he recommended me to Nick Lowe, who's like the head editor at the Spider-Man offices. He's like, "Hey man, what do you want to be into?" I was like, "Look, I want to do two things. I want to write Spider people and Black people. And I want to write Spider people." So like, I got honestly two options to choose from between Miles and Hobie. He's like, "Well, great." And from that, I got like a 10-page backup, I think, and Miles Morales #25 was like my first comic, and it just sort of snowballed from there. But Like I wouldn't have had that opportunity if one I hadn't gotten that She-Hulk job, and if I hadn't met Zeb. Like as much as Jessica Gao got me into like TV writing proper, Zeb is the only reason I'm writing Miles Morales is because Zeb gave me that shot and gave me let me get my foot in the door.
That is fucking amazing. Like in all
Oh, thanks,
honesty,
man.
yeah. Like in all honesty, I love hearing stories that like one small coincidence caused a whole freaking avalanche of just awesome things
Hmm.
happening, everything like that. So that's one of those instances. I think it's kind of interesting how like all of this happened with a Hulk because I did my research on you because I wouldn't be a good interviewer if I didn't do research.
Yeah.
And I know you brought up how you went to Comic Con when you were a kid,
Hmm.
and pulled some information, and you saw Lou Ferrigno at the Comic Con, didn't you?
Yeah, I was walking through the like I mean I had to be like six. I wasn't double digits yet, but like we were walking through like the con and like I remember seeing this huge dude. I mean, Lee Ferrigno was big, but like when you're a kid, people look even bigger. But I just remember seeing this huge fucking dude, and he was getting like his pictures taken, and people were paying like 25 bucks, whatever. It's like, Dad, who is that? He's like, that's Lou Ferrigno. It's like, who is he? He's like, he used to be the Incredible Hulk. I was like, what is the Incredible Hulk? He's like, bro, I'm not doing 21 questions with you right now. Let me just like buy you a comic book. So like from that he like picked up like I said like Spawn #3 or whatever, and then a random like Jurassic Park tie-in comic that I have no idea what it was about. It was like issue 3 or 4, so like there was
They have
no.
comics.
So, yeah, it was like I think it was. I remember happening is like you're following like these two velociraptors as they're chasing like a wild pig. If anyone listening to this knows what that comic book is, please let me know. I would love to track it down. But those are my first two comics. Was like a
You got to
random
mention
Jurassic
soups.
Park. Yeah, a random Jurassic Park comic and like Spawn #3.
Okay. Do you still have any of those comics?
I I don't have the Jurassic Park one, or at least I can't find it, but I do have Spawns. I have like a comic rack back there somewhere,
Mhm.
and I feel like I have it bag and boarded because I've had it literally since I was like 5 or 6. Like I have it somewhere deep in my comic stash. Like I do want to get it, or I do want to track down that Jurassic Park one just because it has sentimental value. I know it sounds insane, but I know it just has some sentimental value for me.
Honestly, I think I got a couple of different books that have sentimental value that I would not mind tracking down. Like I think one of my oldest comic books I have from like when I was a child was my mom's like ex-boyfriend when I was a kid. He like, oh, you like superheroes? There's this random
Mhm.
comic I found in my attic, and it's like New Teen Titans, but it's the drug issue where like Robin isn't Robin. He's like this random hero called the Protector, and all
Yeah.
this other type of shit. I have it like someplace, but yeah, that is freaking awesome. So okay, I got a question for you. Are you ready for some news roundup?
I am. Hit me.
Okay, all right, cool. Add music in post, amen. Okay, so first piece of news that I have for you. Like I said previously, I did my little research. Uh, wasn't The Boys one of the first comics you were reading when you got more into comics?
It was. This is like fucking hot ones. Like you've done the actual research. Yeah, you may know this, but I worked at a for a place called I think China Walk. I delivered food in this Chinese restaurant in Clemens, North Carolina, and it was literally right next to a comic book shop. So like I would go out and get my tips, whatever, and go back and read or go to the comic book shop and get comics. Like I think the first like superhero thing I bought was like World War Hulk or whatever. But I saw this thing for the boys. I was like, let me just see what this is. And like, it was the first time like getting back into comics, like reading them full time. So like, I got like maybe 13 or 14 issues of the boys, and like I just like did not enjoy that comic at all. It is. I mean, like I that comic is just not. It does not work for me. So when I heard there's going to be a TV show, I was like, they're going to put this racist, sexist garbage on the air, and then you watch the show, and it's such a brilliant. It's like honest for me, like it may be the best adaptation of a comic book property, just because the comic books I thought were so deeply unappealing and off-putting. Yeah, I choked down like 13 issues of the boys. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just do not care. I just do not like the characters in this book.
You know what? I don't blame you because I remember I got my friend for Christmas like a year or two ago. He wanted to like really get into The Boys because he loved the show,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so I bought the volume one of like the collection,
Hmm.
And when I bought it, I was like looking through it. I was like reading the first like I think I read maybe the first two issues, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I can kind of see elements of the show, but I was like, this is really just like shock value every single
Yeah. Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
taking it back, I guess. But since we're talking about the show, did you watch the trailer that came out for the new season?
I did just see the new trailer for season four, I believe. I don't know if they I don't think they do this anymore because I haven't gotten one. But I used to co-host this podcast, this like pop culture like comic podcast, and they would send us screeners early, and I would always be so stoked because I would want to. It'd be great because I'd get like season like three of The Boys like early, like months, like a month before it came out, so I'd binge watch
Oh,
everything. But then like I couldn't have anyone to talk to it about because the episodes wouldn't be out yet. So like part of me is like bummed that I don't have that because I can't watch them all in one sitting. But also part of me is like happy that I get to like watch it week to week like everyone else and like not have be cursed with knowledge. So I'm a big fan of this series. I think along with Gen V, like I finished Gen V like maybe 2 weeks ago. Another brilliant adaptation of a comic from the Boys universe, which I thought was pretty reprehensible. But I'm excited. Like I think that they're one of the few superhero shows that are like doing something that's interesting, and also they've managed to like find the balance between like some of the, like the sort of more fuck you energy of the Boys comics, but also making it not be completely off putting. You know, like they found a way to find the balance between it being a nice biting commentary on like superhero media in general, but also having that sort of like tongue in cheek, dark, twisted sense of humor that I think the show has done a pretty good job of maintaining for the past, I guess at this point, 4 seasons.
yeah, I think the show's really good. Like, it's a really There's so much I can say about the boys. I freaking love that show.
Yeah,
Like, it's very cynical, very sadistic, but like it's
yeah,
in a way that's that's still consumable. Like I
hmm,
love it. It's really entertaining. I haven't finished Gen V yet. Uh,
yeah.
I got like
Gen V is
halfway
great.
through it.
I think you'd really. I mean, obviously, if you like the boys, you'll like Gen V, but it's one of my. It was like one of my favorite seasons of TV I've seen this year.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got another piece of information for you. Uh, Marco Cinchetto revealed some images from the new Ultimate Spider-Man. So another
Hmm.
piece of information I like had over here. Soups. This is our episode of Hot Ones featuring Cody
Hmm.
Ziglar. Uh, so okay, another piece of information. Didn't you possibly Pirates Bay the
Yeah,
Ultimate Comics?
Dan Slott hated that answer. But yeah, I when I was in, it had to be my sophomore to junior year, I think, of undergrad. I was obviously completely destitute and broke, and I was a big fan of the Pirates Bay. So like it would start small, like, oh, I want to read this issue of whatever because I hadn't been able to catch up, and I ended up downloading like every single thing at that point from the Ultimate Marvel line. So like truly like Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, Ultimate Enemy, Ultimate Wolverine versus like truly literally every single thing that was published in under the Ultimate Marvel comic line I read. Like even like the weird first like short story where New York Fury shows up and he doesn't look like Sam Jackson yet. Like I read every single one of those things. Like I read every single ultimate like comic thing that I could. And I did the same thing with Deadpool. Like I read every single appearance of Deadpool, even the like weird pseudo crossover he had with like and the and like Bat and some like random Batman and Superman team up where like he fights Slade Wilson and like I've truly read everything. Like that's how I got into comics proper and like now I've sort of made it up by spending all my money on comics and all that stuff. But like truly like it what got me into like comic books as a whole was like the Ultimate line. Like like to me it's still like I read Ultimate before I read 616 and like that to me is still like sort of my defining superhero take on characters. I reread Ultimates 1 and 2 recently and like they sort of parts of it show their age but some of it really holds up. Like I still haven't seen too many comics that like feel like you're watching a movie. Like some of those double spreads in Ultimates 1 and 2 is like just sort of breathtaking. Like oh, this seems like a widescreen comic. Like there's some really cool stuff going on in that universe, and also Ultimate Spider-Man was like obviously like I really latched onto that.
Honestly, the Ultimate Universe, one of the things I really loved about the Ultimates, because I've only read Ultimates 1, and that movie really reads like a summer blockbuster. Like, it's the year is night between 1997 to 2003, and we're talking summer blockbuster, Brad Pitt, all that type of shit. Like, that's the type of shit that not movie, that book was giving, and I loved it because I'm a type of person who loves early 2000s type of stuff. And just sitting down and reading that was a fun time. I think my last time reading it was like a couple of years ago. Uh, and I also really liked Ultimate Fantastic Four a lot. The first couple of storylines and everything in there. Seeing the MCU really take inspiration from the Ultimate Comics for like the first phase or everything was actually really fun to see, especially because I was like growing up with it at the time, I guess. And even watching the Ultimate Avengers movie was pretty cool too. So my question was, with the new emergence of Ultimate Comics, the new imprint and everything, is it
Mhm.
going to be something you're going to be reading or something you're like really interested in looking into?
Yeah, I would love to read some stuff. It's one of those things where like I right now, because I just have so little time to like read comics. Like what I'll usually do is I'll usually buy like the number one, just to give them like the sales, or like if it's like a friend that's doing and just like show them some love. Or if I have a friend that has like a comic, like an issue or something come out, I'll buy it. But like what I'll do now is like I just for like books shelf space, like I'll just have to wait for like a trade paperback or an omnibus just to like save space, because there's just like I just like as you go to comic shop, you leave with like 5 or 10 books, and now I like have all these books taking up space, and like I think I just have to, for the sake of myself and the sanity of my girlfriend, to like not have my place stacked with comics. So like I am super interested in checking out this Ultimate Spider-Man. I'll obviously probably buy the first issue, and then I'll wait till like the trade comes out, or it's on the Marvel Unlimited app, and read it there.
Honestly, same. I love Omnibus just for the same reason. I like
Yeah.
having like the full story there and also just
Hmm.
like less space, all that type of shit.
Yeah. Hmm.
Digitals for me, like I've gotten better about reading digitals, primarily just for the show. Cause there's times where either A, I can't order the book, or either B, I don't got the time to go to the library and get like the physical book. So okay, I'm gonna go on and just like go on my library Hoopla app, or either go on the prospective company's website and just read it. But I don't know why, I just like physicals better. It like holds my attention better. I don't know, maybe it's the
Yeah. Yeah.
ADHD, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, also it's just nice to have it on like your actual bookshelf. Like it's nice to. I don't know. I do. I mean, I like physical media. Like that's. I mean, everyone says buy physical media. Like I'm sort of stuck between two worlds. It's one of those things. Also, I think when I move out of my apartment and get like an actual house, I'll probably just have a room dedicated that I can put all this stuff in. Like and actually have like an actual like wall of comic books and graphic novels and stuff.
I would love that. That honestly seems like the dream, is having a whole library and everything.
Yeah.
I also want to get one of those like scanners that like has like a whole digital
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
library, so I can know what you got.
Yeah.
But all right, so that is it with our news roundup. So all right, so let's look at our first piece of conversation that we're going to be talking about.
Hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about your work on Miles Morales. Now, I've read the first storyline
Hmm.
of your run so far, and I gotta say, I really love how trying to figure out the words to say this, but you know what? Fuck it, I'm just gonna say it. I love how black it is. I love how
Thanks, brother.
black it is,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Cause prior to this, I was actually talking to someone else from a different podcast, and we were just talking about how it's really great to see black characters having a voice that feels very true to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's something that may be lacking depending on the writing
Mhm.
team that's behind them. And
Yeah.
I just loved seeing that, especially Miles's use of slang, and then all the other black
Oh.
characters that used the slang and everything like that.
Mm.
So my question for you was it easy to like come up with Miles's voice and come up with the other character's voice while you're working with them and everything?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, first of all, thanks for that compliment. That's really, really nice. I really appreciate that. That's something that I was also sort of aiming for, is that to bring that sort of authenticity to Miles's speech, because he is a 6-year-old black Puerto Rican kid and from Brooklyn. So like I think he probably drops his G's when he says certain things. But yeah, it's such a boring non good answer. So like I just write him how I talk to my friends in our group chat. So like, like it's just like it's like that's how me and my cousins talk. Like maybe we don't say nigga as much as we could in the comic, but like, that's or in the comics much we do in real life. But like, I write Miles like how I talk to my friends and like it's I think editorial's been really good about letting me do that. Sometimes you'll get back like the PDFs with like notes and you're like, what does this mean? Like, oh, this is what this word means, or like um I can't. There's something I can't remember what. There was some line. There was some word in the first one that like, I think I said he's him or something like that. I had like something like that. Like, and they're like, "What does this mean?" I was like, "Look, this is what this means." So like, they're really good about like letting me explain stuff. But it is fun being like, "Oh, this is funny sometimes being like, oh yes, like." I think everyone on my editorial staff is definitely white, so like they don't understand some of the slang. But yeah, the answer is like I just write them how I talk to my friends, like my black friends and cousins and stuff, and like I'm sure it's the same way. Like in group text, people talk a very particular sort of way, and like that's how Miles. That's how I like have Miles and his friends, particularly like Starling or even like Genki and Judge and stuff. Like they talk like that because that's how I talk, and like even though that's still not close to like how 16-year-olds talk. Like my girlfriend has a 16-year-old daughter, and like she talks completely different than like I did when I was 16. So like if I put the way that she talks in there, like I would just sound like an old man. Like that would just totally sound like, "Hey kid, hello, what's up, my fellow high schoolers?" Like I would just sound like such an old dude.
Not Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Hello, my fellow.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, one of the things that really stood out for me was utilizing Misty Knight in there.
Oh, thank you.
And I love Misty. Like I love Misty not only because I always liked Misty, but I think what really caused me to like her a little bit more was the Luke Cage Netflix show, and then me going back and like learning more about Misty and everything. But just like the way that you wrote her and just wrote the way that she's interacting with Miles is just great. Great. I even liked how Miles was like, "Yo, yeah, let's team up," because it's really cool to see another black hero. And I was sitting there and I was like, if I was a
Yeah.
superhero, yeah, I probably would say some shit like that. And just the comedy, like you're really good at writing and juggling the comedy. So my question is, when it came to adding Misty in there, I
Mhm.
know that you said previously on different interviews when you came on this book, you wanted to see Miles interacting with more black heroes and everything like that. Was Misty your first pick for this first arc?
Misty was always at I think even in my initial pitch doc from like 2 years ago, Misty was probably the first name. I think originally I pitched. I mean, honestly, I went kind of overboard. It was like Misty and Luke Cage and fucking. It was like so like basically every black superhero. I was like, Miles needs to hang out with them, and then my editor was like, you should probably pick one and then have the others like show up eventually when they want to. Like that's why Miles and Brielle showed up in this sort of last arc. Another reason that I had Blade and his daughter Bloodline show up is that when the comic was first announced, like I guess 2 years ago, I was on a Comic Con panel in New York with Eve Ewing and a bunch of other awesome dope creators. But like the creator for Bloodline was on that, and they had a really beautiful story about like what Bloodline meant to them and all that stuff. And I was like, if I'm gonna get Miles, like there's no way that I can't not try to give this character like a little shine. So like that's where Brielle and Blade came from. But Misty Knight was always there at the beginning. Like I love that character. I feel like it's a character that can sort of scratch a bunch of itches. One, she's a street level character, and like, and my initial pitch for Miles was always bringing him back to street level stuff. I think that between the Spider Verse movies and Saladin's run, like he had so many like just fucking cool big stories with like Miles going to the future and fighting like his evil clones and like all that cool stuff that I was like I, it's gonna be very hard for me to top that. Also, that's not naturally like where my brain goes when it comes to like Spider-Man stuff. Um, so like I wanted to give him grounded, make him more grounded, but also I wanted to bring in like a black mentor for Miles. I think it's very important for him to have that. And Missy just seemed like the perfect person for it. At the time, I didn't know that I was going to necessarily give Miles like the Venom Saber, the electricity sword, but I knew that I could have Misty and by extension Colleen sort of scratch the itch of like giving Miles martial arts training because I knew I wanted him like to sort of change up his move style and make it a little bit different from the other Spider people. So like that's sort of where Misty came from. Is that like I thought she'd be great. I thought she'd be really fun, and she um, also scratches the itch of being a detective. I think that with Miles's unique power set of being able to turn invisible, and it seemed like a pretty one to one, like a pretty easy accentuation of that. And like, oh yeah, it would be cool if like a Spider-Man was like a detective and like he could learn skill sets from Misty. So like, that's what it all sort of stemmed from. But like, yeah, I always sort of had Misty as like the go-to superhero that I wanted to team Miles up with when we were first pitching this book.
Dope. I think Misty was a really good choice, especially because like I don't think that would have been like, um, I wouldn't have been my first like thought to have Misty team up with Miles, especially bringing him back to being street level. My first thought would have been maybe Luke Cage or something like that, but
Hmm.
utilizing Misty was really cool. My next question for you was like, was there a lot of pressure that came into like hopping into like Miles Morales, like this big of a character?
Miles Morales as a character, like it's uh, it's it's so it's so it's so kind of it's one it's like it's cool and challenging, but like because there's like now like Miles is like for many people he's like he is Spider-Man. There's like the movies, like the video games, like there's so much like cool stuff that like Miles has been doing and will continue to do. Um like what I want to do with Miles is like I mean, I'm sure you've seen this in your research as well. That like I've definitely been leaning into like the manga anime of this. Like definitely the I think I've seen a couple people call him Shonen Man, which we've been calling him in the Spidey offices because it's just a funny it's a very funny thing to peg Miles as. But like I definitely want to lean more into that aspect of it. I definitely want to like continue building out his rogues gallery. I think another thing Saladin did was give him some really fucking cool villains, like with Snatcher, the especially the Accessor, who put Miles through it. Even like Shift and Salim were like really cool. So like I want to keep doing that. But like Rabble is definitely the one that I'm like really interested to see like how their relationship develops over the rest of my run. Like, you know, I sought out to sort of give him like his like his sort of like Green Goblin like his like arch enemy. And like as we've been writing more Rabble stories, it's been cool watching how she has evolved and how their dynamic of the relationship has sort of evolved as well. Like I think I definitely want to see Miles confront maybe someone who I think every Spider-Man is always like I can save everyone, I can do both, like in Spider-Verse where when Spider-Man India, like I think the quintessential like Spider-Man trait is like when like the bus is going over and like you that Gwen Stacy's that version of Gwen Stacy's dad is about to get crushed, he's like I can save both. Like I think Miles is going to have to grapple with like the idea of like you can't save everyone and like how do you approach a villain who does not want to be saved at all and actually wants to actively hunt you down. So like that's my long-winded answer of saying I definitely want to lean more into like the like shonen like early like Goku and Vegeta when Vegeta's like yo I'm not here to be your friend, I'm here to fucking put you in the ground. Like that's what I'm most excited to sort of like explore with this next Miles issues.
Okay. Okay, so I noticed that you touched on the video game and the movie. So if you had to choose,
Mm-hmm.
which ones did you like more?
Ooh, dude, that's a hard question. The movie, I mean, the films are so fucking good. I mean, I love them both equally. I think they're great, but I think Spider-Man 2 was clean. Like that is a clean game. Like,
Don't
look, I'm
spoil
letting you
it.
know.
I didn't play it yet.
Have you beaten? Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything. I'm just letting you know that I kept the streets clean. Like that is the safest city on the block right now under my watch. That game is so fun, dude. Like, have you played it at all, or you haven't touched any of it?
I have not touched any of it. Like I'm honestly
Okay.
surprised that like I have been able to avoid a lot of spoilers. The couple of
Yeah,
them got
that's
spoiled,
good.
like the whole Mary Jane scream thing, and then
Hmm.
like some stuff that like if I use my brain, I can already figure it out. But then for the most part,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
didn't really get spoiled to a lot of things just yet.
Oh, good. Well, look, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, it's a great game. It's a great Spider-Man story, but also it's a great Spider-Man Miles Morales story. Like, it's great. You're like that to me is so much fun. Like even now, still, I'll just like put on some like '90s hip hop and just like swing around New York as Miles. It's clean, dude. Like that's like probably my favorite. Excuse me. That's probably like my favorite like Spider-Man property. It's just like the Sony Spider-Man games are so fucking good, dude.
Okay, okay. So game over the movie or it's same level?
Same levels. I mean, look, the movies are fantastic. I cry at every single Spider Verse movie, but I think as far as like because I get to physically play as Miles, I think that's why I got to give the game just like a little bit of edge.
Okay, okay. So okay, my next question, real quick, going back to what you were talking about with Rabble.
Hmm.
How did you come up with Rabble? Because in all honesty, like I really loved seeing her character unfold and then her backstory. It was a very real backstory, very real, and then it
Hmm.
also was very sad and kind of tragic in a way, but it also
Oh,
it made a lot of sense.
yeah, thank you. Thanks, dude. Um, it was one thing that did you play the first Spider-Man Miles Morales game at all?
Yes, it did.
Okay, cool. So like I what I loved about that game, besides just being cool, is that like they gave Miles a villain that was his age. Like he gave the Tinkerer was Finn was like Miles's friend who was his age and was very smart and like I like that angle. I like the idea of giving Miles like it's for most Miles it's like him fighting like 30-year-old men. You're like, why is this dude got beef with a child? Like this is so strange to me. Like this grown ass man who plays bills like is beefing with the high schooler. Like what's good, dude? You can't do nothing else. Like I thought that always struck me as just so strange that like why is Hobgoblin beefing with this child? It's so weird. It's like I wanted to give him like someone his age that was a villain, and also someone that was a woman. Just because I feel like you don't see that many villains as like their main like arch enemy or whatever. But it was born out of it's as politically as you can get in like a big two comic, but like yeah, it's like it's kind of fucked up that like kids have to flip a coin to get their future to have their future decided with like going through like a lottery system. And even Bendis touched on that in like his initial pickup with Miles. Like, I think I can't remember the line, but like I think he says like it's not fair, it shouldn't be like that or whatever. But like I have Miles say that again in like the issue 5 when they fight when they sort of hashing it out. But like she was born out of that. It seemed like a natural homage to like to Finn and the Tinkerer with like the color palette and like being sort of a tech based hero, but also there's something tragic about being like this is a joke that I always talk about with like other comic book writers, but like besides like super strength, like being super smart is like the most dime for a dozen power in like Marvel. Like of like I think Marvel always puts out like the 10 smartest, most brilliant people in Marvel, and like of the 10, like half of them live in Manhattan alone. I'm like, you got Tony Stark and like Mr. Fantastic and Bruce Banner and Peter Parker, and like, yeah, who cares? Like if you're a genius, like the whole sort of tragedy of Raneem was Rabble, her street name Raneem, is that if she could have won that lottery in her eyes, like she could have been the Riri Williams. Like she could have like the only thing separating Riri and Raneem is that access is that like Riri had access to privilege or to resources and like Raneem doesn't. Like her whole sort of driving motivation isn't that like Miles won the lottery over her, like that's what sort of sets it off. But the whole idea is that like her parents like sacrificed everything to get her over here, and like her whole in the bargain was like, I'm going to be a good daughter to like to for you to succeed, and like she was sort of robbed for that. So like the whole sort of like another sort of tragic angle is that like this is all just her projecting onto Miles. Like she's not, she's mad that he won, but it's really what it represents is that like this kid got all these fucking opportunities that could have been me. Like it could have gone for my family. And like I think a lot of that is built out of like, commentary on a system that pits kids against one another to have a good future. So like I feel like my eyes rolled in the back of my head. I feel like I zoned out. I hope that I'm answering your question, but yeah, like that's where Raneem came about, and also it's just nice to have a fucking hater. Like it's just nice to have a villain that's like, yo, you you gotta take this L. Like this, you can't talk your way out of these hands. So like that's also like a fun thing to have, and like I don't know if it'll ever happen. I'm sure it will, but like in I'm sure there'll be some storyline where they have to team up against like a bigger bad down the line, and like that'll just be fun. Like it truly is just like early like Namek level like Vegeta hater energy. Like that's what I'm trying to channel in Raneem.
Honestly, I've talked about this on other episodes with other guests. My
Mhm.
favorite type of villain are the petty ass, hating ass villains. Like last episode, we built our own Suicide Squad teams with
Mhm.
Yes. If you haven't listened to the episode, go listen to it.
Mhm.
And like one of the tangents was me. And I don't remember if I left it in the episode or if I cut it out. I don't remember, but it was me just like telling Yaz about like how with the shit Norman Osborn really was. Cause like
Yeah,
how like
yeah.
you have to be like a next level of hater to get so mad over a hero or a character fucking up your shit. So you're like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm gonna follow you like 10 story, like 30 stories up though,
Yeah, yeah.
just so I can see who the fuck you are. Like something
Yeah.
about that. I love
Yeah.
hating ass characters,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
Doctor
They're
Doom.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fun. It's like also it's just like what comic books are. Like it's for me anyway, like I like giving characters like pathos and like you should be able to relate to Reneem on a level. Like I think there are probably people like who can relate to the idea of like, yeah, it's kind of weird that like we have to pit all these black and brown kids against one another to get like the chance to go to a good school that's not dog shit. But also you're like, well, maybe you should blow up his family's house and
yeah,
to get your anger out. Maybe that's not the answer, you know?
yeah. Like she had the right thought at first. Like this is a
Yeah.
problem, but the
Yeah.
execution, that's where the
Exactly. Yeah.
problem was. And I
Yeah.
just love seeing that.
Yeah.
What was your writing process when it came to starting your Miles run? Like, did you have to map everything out, or did you already have like an idea going in there?
My writing process, it's you know, I don't can't remember if I told you about this when we met at Detroit, but um Zeb Wells gave me this fucking brilliant breakdown for how he writes comics. And when he introduced me, when I told him that I was getting Miles, he's like, "Dude, say less." He didn't say less because he's a white guy, but he was like, "Dude, I got you. Here, check this out." And he sent me this fucking beautiful email, um, just like breaking down his process. And I send it to every single person I know that writes their first comic, and I still literally use it every day to this day. Like I'm going to finish writing some Miles after this, and I'm still using this exact process. But long story short, like he has this system that I still use to this day. So like for Miles, I knew that I wanted to do like a 5 issue arc, and he sort of gave me his breakdown for how he approaches 5 issue arc, which is like open like the first issue like a big fun day is normal, like you fight and then you run into like a random villain, maybe Scorpion or whoever, and you end on like a big fun cliffhanger. Issue 2 is like sort of like trying to figure out what happened, maybe like a little bit of a side fun adventure, and then issue 3 is when like you realize what the story is going to be about, and then issue 4 is like chasing to the to like disarm the bomb, and then issue 5 opens with the bomb going off. Like that's basically how he broke it down. And like I sort of used that, but like going in, i had I think I had like 5 rough outlines, and then as we went along, things changed dramatically. Like I think originally, like I feel like there's a lot of like you saw a lot of like rabble, like plotting and like using her hologram to say I'm gonna go after this character, but you never saw her actually getting busy. So like my editor was like, you should just have her like just pull up on someone. I was like, all right, well let's have her and her have her and like let's have her, let's have her like let's have her run a fade on Starling and see what's going on. So like that's where that came in. And then also like I
Starling
think
was
a
unbothered, by the way. That's the part. That's the part that
yeah.
really got me. Like
Oh,
she was not giving a fuck. She was like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
okay."
yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know you think you know how to different. I think you use these like little criminals. I'm built different. I think I think the major haul was that I think issue 3 is like the big flashback. I think it opened. That's when it opens up with the flashback with Reneem. You learn about her, but originally that was going to be issue 4. But
Mhm.
we're like, that's so fucking late in the game, and also like, why would you wait to the end to like find out who this character is? Like that was the only big difference, but a lot of it was just like sort of filling out as it goes along. Like I didn't have Miles getting a sword in the original outline until like maybe I think maybe halfway through issue 4, and I was like, wouldn't it be fucking cool if you like got like a new power? Because I was sort of thinking of it as like an anime or a manga where like characters get these new powers like when they're pushed to the brink, whether it's going Super Saiyan or like learning a new power set because they've had to push past their limits, or they've there's someone that they love or whatever is in grave danger. It's like that seemed like a pretty natural end for me. And also Miles already has like you know it originally started as like bio little shock thing, but like over the years, because he's been around for 12 years, people like, yeah, let's evolve this. So like now he just he's always had like sort of full fledged like bioelectric powers for the past couple of years. So I was like, it seems like a fun like extension of that, and also like it'd be fun to just like write a Spider-Man with the sword. Like it'd be cool to write like a Ronin Kenshin Spider-Man. You know, everyone knows with like the whole thing with like Peter Parker or any Spider Person that they have to pull their punches, like that famous um Superior Spider-Man issue where like fucking Peter just like punches off the jaw of of Scorpion, and Doc Ock, who was taking over Spider-Man's body, is like, oh shit, I didn't know he was walking around with this. Like he has been pulling his punches. I should be dead. Like everyone that fights Spider-Man should be dead. And like I thought it'd be a fun way to like sort of embody the idea of having to pull your punches, and also just get some fun action sequences, because the artist Federico Visentini also is a huge fan of like manga and anime. So like it just seems like a fun and different. Also like if they're gonna let me fucking write this book for however many years, like I might as well like have as much fun doing it while I can, and then whoever takes over can like either keep that or throw it away. But as long as I'm driving the ship, he's using the fucking sword. So like like you got to choke it down. And it turned out really fucking cool. Like Marvel offices loved it. They're like, oh, this is my editor Tom was like, this is crazy that you're just writing a fucking shonen comic book. It's really fun. But that was, yeah, like the outline phrase was like the rough beats, but like the actual process, like I was just finding it as I was writing it, like besides like the major beats. But I will say that probably that first five are the most thought out the arcs have been, outside of like loose stuff, just because things are always changing. Like originally, after 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 that issue 5, originally it was going to go straight to what became the Blade and Brielle sort of story, where originally it was like Miles moves into like a new apartment, he's got like a weird neighbors, like a villain or whatever, then him and Miss Marvel are the ones that actually like do the superheroing stuff. But then they fucking killed Miss Marvel, so I was like, well, I guess I'm not using her for a little bit. So things like that, change. But yeah, that was the most basic process, was like throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what's cool, and then also writing stuff that I think would be really fucking hyped to see as like a 6-year-old kid.
It's really funny that you're talking about manga and anime and inspiration and everything, because
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered you based off information, or me just because I follow you on socials,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed you post about mangas and stuff like that sometime, and I didn't make the dots or connections that was an
Mm-hmm.
inspiration for your writing on Miles as well too. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny
Yeah.
that you're mentioning this, because when I was at work and I was just reading the first story arc,
Yeah.
I was sitting there with my coworker who, and also a really good friend of mine, Blake.
Mm.
You listen to the show. Hey, Blake. So I was sitting next to him, and I was telling him, I was like, you know what, nigga, this is like really kinetic art wise,
Mm.
and it's
Mm.
giving anime like, or
Yeah.
am I really like, am I seeing this correctly? And then he looked over
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, yeah, I could kind of see it. And I was thinking about the sword, and I was like, hmm. I did not connect the dots. Didn't connect the dots
Oh
until
yeah, yeah,
afterwards.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the artist Federico, we had a after like the first arc that we did. I always try to do this with every artist I work with, but I send them an email, be like, "Yo, great work. This is fantastic stuff. Like, let me know what you would be excited to write. Like, what makes you happy? Like, what makes you excited to like draw stuff?" He's like, "Hey, man, this is great. I love what we're doing. Like, I love animation, so like, I try to draw stuff in like an animated style. Whereas like um I think if you took some of those pages from those first arc and like made like an actual animated sequence, you would sort of see what sort of Federico's trying to do. Like I keep thinking to maybe it's issue 3 or 4, there's like this double spread where it's like the first time that Raneem fights Miles, and like she like kicks his ass and then like blows him up and like throws him into the river. But like I think in the actual comic, like you sort of get the hint that she's like throwing her like hard light javelin, but like in animation, like, oh, I would see how this sequence would play out. And like
Mm.
that's what brings Federico a lot of joy, particularly in like these later issues. I was just talking with my editor Tom the other day about how we're at the point now where like Federico sends his art in and we're like, yeah, we got no notes, dude. Like keep cooking. Like we got nothing to add to this. Like there's some real cool shit that he does. And issue, I mean, all these issues, but like particularly issue 13. There's one panel in particular that's just like straight up from like, Yu Yu Hakusho. It's just like it's just Federico having the most fun, and like I think it's sort of we sort of lucked out in that we're both heavily inspired by that medium and that art form. So like this is sort of us. This is sort of like the I guess the snake eating its tail. Like it's sort of like how like westerns and inspired samurai movies, which then inspired more westerns, which then inspired Star Wars. So like it's like one of those things where like manga inspired us, and then it inspired these comic books that go back to inspire manga. So like it's just
Circle.
been so fun to like let Marvel let us like experiment with this style of storytelling. Honestly.
That is fucking awesome. You know what? I want to move and ask you some questions about Spider Punk. Okay, so okay, number one, before I even laid eyes on your work with Spider Punk, I found out right after seeing uh Across the Spider Verse. I found out through a TikTok video that there was a playlist that was inspired by Spider-Punk, created by the current writer, and it was a viral TikTok, might I add.
Uh,
And I was like, oh, okay, let me listen to this. Okay, this is great. This is fire.
yeah,
Wow.
thank you.
And then, come to my surprise, I found out that the current writer of Spider-Punk was black because this was before I knew. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I love that. So when I was doing research for this interview, I also noted that you were a huge fan of punk music.
Mhm.
So when creating this playlist, was this the playlist you listened to throughout the entirety of you just writing Spider Punk and everything?
Yeah, so the playlist came about out of two things. The main thing was like as soon as I got the call from the editor Danny Kazam, he's like, "Hey man, do you want to do Spider Punk?" I was like, "Yeah, you can." He's like, would you want to do this?" I was like, "Dude, you came to the right guy. Like I played in a bunch of fucking shitty punk bands growing up. Like, yeah, I got this." So like the first thing I did was I immediately made like a playlist of like I think it was like 50 it was like 50 60 songs, just stuff that I could listen to while I was writing to get inspired. Like I go on runs or work out or whatever, and I'd be listening to it. And through the process, I was like, "Hey, Danny, would you guys be into like just like making like a curated playlist? It could be like a fun like free thing for like fans to like just enjoy it." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." So like it eventually got whittled down to like 7-ish songs per issue. I think it's like 35 total, but it came out of like just what I listened to. It was a mix of like stuff I listened to growing up, just to get inspired. Stuff I listening to now is like some sort of newer things that I listen to. Um, and truly like we made it just for like for basically me and the artist Justin and the colorist Jim and Danny, and like yeah, fans will listen to it, they can listen to it. And like when it came out, like we had maybe a couple hundred like likes, and then when Spider Verse came out, it went from like to like I went truly went from like 200 likes to like 90,000 in like 3 days. Like what the fuck is going on? Like my friends are sending me I think that same TikTok like like yeah, the creator of Spider Punk or the writer of Spider Punk made this playlist. I'm like, this is crazy. And then like got to the point where like they I guess Spotify had made like an official playlist or whatever, so like they kept changing my name and taking the art. It was just a whole strange thing. And then like now, if you type in Spider Punk playlist, you see like a dozen like copycats from the one that I made. It's very strange. It's so weird, but like I've gotten a lot of like really nice compliments, sort of like how you as you said, but like it's been a nice I created one out of inspiration, but also as like a nice like sort of gateway drug to like punk music as a whole.
Mhm.
I think without tuning my own horn, I think it is like a pretty good job of covering a sort of a decent selection of punk, especially what I was listening to, which is like the main thing. And we're sort of I'm like halfway through Spider Punk 2 right now, and like we do have another playlist for that, and like that'll drop when that comes out. So hopefully people will still enjoy it. But yeah, like it truly just came out of music that I was super excited to listen to while writing the book. And then I was like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if like people like listen to this when they read along to it, and then people fucking went wild for it.
Honestly, that is a dope ass playlist. I've played it during going to the gym. I've even played it just while reading comics.
Yeah.
I've even played it while soups. I have been replaying Ultimate Spider-Man
Yeah.
on Xbox 360, and I was just
Yeah.
playing that playlist the entire time. It's not a
Ah,
Spider-Punk
fun.
game, but just good ass playlist. Like I already liked punk music,
Oh,
but
thank you.
like it felt like a whole deep dive on that whole
Yeah,
entirety as a genre. I know you touched a little bit
yeah.
about how like you getting on Spider Punk came about. Um, would you say Spider Punk was like a really special experience for you to hop on, especially being a black kid who loved punk and who played in bands and everything like that?
Yeah, 1000%. Like, it's one of those things where, like, at that point, like, Hobie hasn't appeared in that much stuff. Like, he was in, some of the Spider Verse stuff and a couple of like really cool, like short story backups and stuff. But like, he hadn't, like, you truly haven't doesn't see really what his world is like. So like, we really lucked out in that they gave us truly carte blanche to do anything that we wanted to. Like, we could do anything we wanted to with Earth 138. So like, it also was like a perfect storm of like me being into it, and then Justin Mason's the artist, his art style fitting it just like perfectly. Like, I've never had that much fun truly like writing a book, just because we'd always be texting like, hey Jason, what if we did this? He's also a huge anime and manga fan. So like, hey Justin, what if we put, have you seen this page from Dragon Ball Super manga? No, but that's cool, let's do this. So there's a lot of that. And then also like the designs are just, his designs are just so fucking cool. Like, I remember we were talking about the designs for that version Daredevil, this Colombian girl, Colombian American girl, Matea Murdoch is the character, but like talking about like how it'd be cool to like if you used her drumsticks to like use her echolocation, and just like so much fun writing that book. Like, and they let us get away with so much stuff that we couldn't do in like a bigger book, or like a book with a more well known character. So like, it was just like, it was the most fun I ever had writing a book, and like getting that done. I think Marvel enjoying that is what led to them offering me the Miles. I think that was like sort of like the test run, is that like, we're gonna see what this guy can do, and if it turns out well, we'll give him a shot at Miles. And like, I think it turned out pretty good, and like we had like a lot of fun making it. And I think that sort of enthusiasm just um sort of spread on on the through the pages. Also, I got to give a shout out to the colorist for that book. Jim Chartolimpidis was like the colorist for that book, and it's like, it's still to me like one of the coolest colored books I've seen. Like, I just, the colors are just so weird and crazy, and like, I don't know what the fuck Jim was smoking, but like, he just had so much fun coloring that book. And like, I was looking at pages the other day, I'm like, this is just like such a wild swing to like color a book this way. It's just like some cool stuff. He just did some really, everyone in that book was having a lot of fun.
Do you ever just find yourself looking at the book being like, wow, I worked on this? Who wrote this again? Oh, it was me. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hey, I was cooking.
So okay, so Hobie didn't have much of a voice because he showed up in a
Mhm,
couple of different places. So what was it like finding
mhm.
Hobie's voice on your time on Spider Punk and then also going into Spider Punk too?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I think I got like probably like 20 to 25% of the DNA from this really cool short story that Jed McKay did. It was just, I mean, I think that's the one that like really introduced Captain Anarchy and like Norman Osborn, which is who I ended up being the big bad for that. But like, that gave like a little bit of the juice, and then a lot of it was also like kind of similar to like how I interact with my friends, and like I wanted it to be up until that point, Spider Punk had always been, sort of had like a chip on his shoulder. Like, he was sort of a curmudgeon. So I think I thought it would have been fun to see how he interacts in his own universe, where like he's probably like, not as dour. He's probably like a little bit more of a happy camper. Like, he still has an edge to him, but like, it's fun seeing him like interact with like Miss Marvel and Captain Anarchy and Riot Heart, and be like, oh, he's like a fanboy of himself. Like, he's a guy that's really into like the idea of being like the punk themed Spider-Man, which I thought was really fun. And like, he's really into like the spider, like all of it. Like, I just the enthusiasm, like, I don't think you, I think it was fun adding the like sort of wild-eyed enthusiasm for Hobie. Like, he's the one that's like super stoked on the idea of going on tour to like go kill the president. Like, I thought that stuff was like just so fun to write. And like, sort of finding out how each person in the Spider-Man, their dynamics sort of like works within that world. Like, me and Justin ended up landing on Miss Marvel being like the glue that holds the band together. Like the band together, like everyone loves Kamala. Like there's no point in the band where anyone will ever have beef with her. So like it was just fun, like sort of fleshing those stuff out. But like I think the big thing I added was just like giving like a little bit more enthusiasm. I think for life for Hobie, which because he had appeared so little and he hadn't had time to like sort of gestate in his own comic, which is I think a pretty freeing thing to have.
Is there a way to describe how it must feel being able to add to the lore of these monumentous characters? Like Spider Punk is
Oh
on his way
man.
to become a really big character because of the movie and also because of the first book, and also Spider Punk 2 that you're working on and
Mm.
everything. And also Miles is also already has become a really big character. So what does it feel like having that pen in your hands and being like, wow, damn, I'm really adding to the lore of these like big characters?
Definitely surreal. I mean, like I said, like I have the first issue of Miles that I bought like 12 years ago, is bag and boarded, and I've kept it on every single workspace I've ever worked at. I've always had it like above my desk, no matter where I've been, whether it's in college or undergrad or just like at my apartment before I moved to LA. Like I've always had it around. So like it's really kind of crazy to come home and see like Miles number one next to like Bendis's number one next to like my number one. Is just very weird, very surreal feeling.
What is your dream character that you'd like to work on?
Oh man, dream character. I mean, it sucks. I mean, it doesn't suck. I mean, Miles was like the dream character. Like that's the one I always wanted to do. That's so like Miles was like the one. Like after that, like I'm sort of tired. I mean, I love Deadpool. Like Deadpool would be really cool. Like to get like a Deadpool thing going on would be pretty awesome. Like I said, like I read literally every single issue that he appeared in when I was in college and too poor to buy comics. Other than that, like I don't know, like I don't know. Those are the only two. Like truly, those are the ones. Like Miles was like the big one. Like I got to work to Miles, and then like you get it. Like oh crap, now I got to actually deliver and hope these. I hope I get some good books. Miles and Deadpool. Like I don't know. Maybe cool to do like I wouldn't mind doing like a Blue Marvel thing. Like I really like that character a lot. Like I wouldn't mind doing something with Blue Marvel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Blue Marvel would be cool to really look into. No, thinking about it. Oh yeah, there's so many different
No,
possibilities you could possibly do with Blue Marvel.
yeah, he's a fun character.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are some current or upcoming projects that you're working on right now?
Miles is always going on. Definitely Spider Punk 2. I think that comes out in February. And then I think end of next year, there's not like a hard date. I think it's like Q4 is what people call it. But I got a graphic novel called Goobers coming out on Vault from Vault. So I just got some art in for the first issue today by this really cool artist named Ryan Lee, and it's really fun. It's not superhero stuff. It's like a horror comedy, which has been fun to write some different stuff like that. So like check those out. Those are the main things. And Futurama. Futurama. I can't remember what the new season was called. We called it, I think 8. I think on Hulu was like 11, but the next season of that comes out. I'm guessing next year. So check those things out.
Okay, cool. Well, Soups, we are here. We sat down with the Cody Ziglar. So be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Saturdays Podcast, TikTok at Super Saturdays Pod, and Twitter at Super Saturday PC. Your messages and reviews can make their way on the show. This was Super Saturdays. I'm Damon.
Oh, and I'm Cody Ziglar. Sorry.
Okay, well, Cody, where can where can the Soups find you, Cody?
Uh, check me out on Instagram at Yay for Zig. That's where I got posts. I mean, if you follow me, you see it's mostly art, but that's where I'm usually at these days.
All right. Well, as always, Soups. See you next Saturday.